You still with me, all you lovely people? I know I warned you. Immanuel Kant is not the easiest of philosophers. And so, yeah, I'm having to talk more than normal. And that's, of course, that is saying a lot. I talk too much as it is. Yeah. But here we are. Anyway, but even I will say, yes, the struggle with Kant is real and it is intense. But I do think, he's famous for a reason. There are definitely rewards and gems to be found in this writing and in these ideas. And so, yeah, so really do push yourself, get through this with me now, because I really think by the end of this week, you will have really made the transformation from coal into diamonds. And yeah, it'll be no small thing. You should be proud. Anyhow, let's get back to Immanuel Kant. So we ended the last video with a bit of a puzzle. After all, what is good about the goodwill if not the effects it produces, right? What's left? And so Kant is going to say that the goodness of the goodwill will have to do with, of course, with how it's willing, and for Kant, willing is, again, what it's choosing, why it's choosing it, how it's choosing it. And remember, for Kant, the will reflects our fundamental capacity to choose. And when we choose, we're choosing on the basis of according to principles, and that's represented by a maxim. So it's going to be something about these maxims that we're using to guide our action. So now if you jump to page 12 there, go to page 12, you can see Kant explain what he is going to do, because Kant says he is going to try and, quote, unravel the concept of a will to be highly esteemed in itself and good, apart from any further purpose. So Kant is just doing what we've just said. He needs to explain why the goodwill is good in of itself and not good because, it's good for something else. No, he's trying to say it's good in itself. And so now let's go back to page 12 there. Let's continue on here where Kant goes on to say that our understanding of the goodwill, quote, already dwells in natural sound understanding and needs not so much to be taught as rather just to be brought to light. Now, this is kind of funny because Kant's saying he's going to unravel the concept of a goodwill, and he wants to do it by appealing to what he thinks are some common sense ideas about the will that we all have. And so, yes, he's saying these ideas are common sense because he thinks we already exist in what he says are natural, sound understanding. And so we'll see if you agree or not, whether these are commonsensical or not. But in any case, he thinks, and when we talk about common sense, when we think about the will, when we think about what, we're unraveling this concept of a goodwill, as he says, is he thinks that will help us understand what it is that's going to make the goodwill actually a good thing. And to do that, so Kant says he's going to look at the idea of the will. He's going to look at the will, he says, under certain conditions that will make it clear, what makes a good will good. And he says he's going to do all that, do everything that he's just promised us by looking at the concept of duty. And so if you go back to page 12, right at the bottom there, Kant says, we shall inspect the concept of duty, which contains that of a goodwill, though under certain subjective limitations and hindrances, which, however, far from concealing it and making it unrecognizable, rather bring it out by contrast and make it shine forth all the more brightly. By the way, I do love these metaphors he's giving about the goodwill. He's always comparing the goodwill to a jewel or a diamond that's shining. I don't know. It makes me smile. Anyway, in that quote there, Kant mentions these subjective limitations and hindrances. Now, what he just means is he's going to look at examples that are confounding us or limiting us or controlling us because we're acting based on our desires, our inclinations, our appetites, all that subjective stuff, which Kant thinks is morally worthless, as you can expect, because those are all, your desires, inclinations, and appetites are all conditionally good, unless, of course, they're coming from a good will. But again, he's going to look at decisions based on these desires, inclinations, and appetites, and he's going to say that he's going to look at your desires, inclinations, and appetites when you're in a situation where you have a duty to do something. And he's going to look at situations where you're actually doing your duty. So yeah, the idea is that your desire, your inclinations, your appetites, they don't want you to do your duty. And yet you're going to still do your duty for duty's sake. And Kant's going to say that's going to reveal something pretty important because he's going to see you're doing it because it is your duty. Or as Kant likes to say, you are going to act from duty. Get familiar with that. Acting from duty. That is the idea of moral worth, according to Kant. So again, he's going to look at instances where you don't want to do it. Your desires, inclinations, and appetites say, I don't want to deal with this. But you still do it because it's your duty. Not because you want to, but because, you have to. It's your moral duty. And so Kant is picking ideas like this. It's worth saying, not because he thinks you should, hate doing your duty. Kant thinks you should, of course, you should want to do your duty. It's definitely better if you want to actually do it. But he thinks that it's easier to understand what to act from duty means when you don't want to do it. He just says it's easier to understand what's going on, basically. Again, when situations where we see the person do their duty, but they don't want to, you can tell they really are miserable about doing it. Again, Kant says you don't have to be that way. You can want to do it, and that's going to be okay. But at the end of the day, we have to want it for the right reasons. We'll come there. And so again, before I jump into those examples, though, maybe it is good for you yourself to think of situations of your own where you did once do something, because you had to do it, just because it was your duty and not because you really wanted to do it. Yeah. I mean, can you think of situations where you did the right thing, but you just did not want to do it at all? Or maybe, I don't know. I've read your exams. A lot of you guys are hedonists. So maybe not. Oh, that's fine. You're young. When you get older, you start to find duty starts to maybe make more sense. When you're young, yeah, be a hedonist. Why not? But anyway, the first example that Kant gives is this example of a shopkeeper who sets fair prices. This is on page 13, if you're curious, where he mentions this. But the shopkeeper sets fair prices because she wants her customers to keep coming back. She sets fair prices and she doesn't try to rip them off. Again, she does this because she wants to have maybe a good reputation as with her prices, and so she keeps her customers coming back. Because if she ripped them off, they might stop. They won't like her. They'll stop buying from her. Now we can see what her maxim is. What is the shopkeeper's maxim? Recall, the maxim is the subjective principle of willing, as we saw Kant say. And that just tells us, again, the maxim is telling us what this shopkeeper is doing and why she is doing it. So we first need to specify the material of her maxim. A, the action is just to set fair prices, whereas P, the purpose, is to keep her customers coming back. And so now we can put those together to see the form of her maxim, which is do set fair prices for the sake of keeping your customers coming back. And I think we can all agree the shopkeeper's doing the right thing, I hope. That is, she's setting fair prices. That's her duty, Kant would say. And that's, again, she's doing the right thing. However, Kant, the party pooper, he notes a few things. If you look on page 13 there, jump to page 13, scroll up a ways, you'll see Kant is suggesting that the shopkeeper's actions conform with duty, but they were done from a self-serving purpose. So yeah, the shopkeeper is doing her duty, she's setting fair prices, and that's the right thing to do. So her actions, yes, they conform with duty, says Kant. So that's the contrast. There's actions that conform with duty. Your actions are doing the duty, but the reason why you're doing them is not from duty. So conformity with duty, from duty. Very big distinction we'll keep unraveling here as we go. Yeah, so Kant is saying setting fair prices, great. Her actions conform with duty, says Kant. But he still says these actions have no moral worth at all because she is doing it for the wrong reasons. Because Kant notes, she doesn't want to set fair prices. What does she want? She wants to keep her customers coming back. And so she is acting on what Kant will call an incentive of prudence, in fact, right? Because the shopkeeper is setting these fair prices not because she cares about fair prices, but that she cares about her prudence, her self-interest, making money, I assume in this case. She wants to keep her business profitable with happy customers who keep coming back. That's the reason. And Kant says that reason has no moral worth whatsoever. If you jump back to page 13, page 13, there you can see Kant conclude, thus the actions of the shopkeeper were done neither from duty nor from immediate inclination, but merely for a self-interested purpose. Let's break each of that down. Yes, her action conforms with duty, but Kant says the action was not done from duty because she didn't set fair prices because it was the right thing to do. If it's from duty, she's setting it because that's her duty. No, she's not setting it at all. Setting the fair prices was simply done because it was prudent to do so. It was in her self-interest. So Kant is saying that this is showing a fundamental disconnect between the action, setting the fair prices, and the reason for doing it, to make money. Or to keep her customers happy, because she's doing the action because it's prudent, not because it's her duty and not for any other reason. Furthermore, Kant says the shopkeeper didn't set fair prices out of an immediate inclination. Now, by an immediate inclination, Kant just means that you want to actually do it. But again, she isn't setting fair prices because she actually wants to set fair prices. She's setting fair prices for her real inclination, her real interest. And her real inclination, her real interest, her real desire is to keep her customers happy and probably make money because of that. And so again, she's setting the fair prices for prudential reasons, not because she wants to set fair prices, but because setting fair prices is prudent. And finally, of course, as we've been saying repeatedly, this was merely self-interested behavior because she's doing it only because it's prudent to set fair prices, not for any other reason. Now, Kant would say this is all happening because she has the wrong maxim, because her maxim is based on, as I said, the incentives of prudence. She is not acting, again, she is conforming to duty. She's doing the right thing. If you look at her actions, setting fair prices, great. But when we ask why is she doing it, we get prudential reasons of, I got to keep my customers so I can keep making money. And Kant thinks that's why this action has no moral worth. And so I think, again, I think he's going to say it has no moral worth for two problems I think we're starting to see emerge now in what she's doing. So two problems with her maxim for setting fair prices because it'll keep her customers. Because first, her purpose. What's her purpose? Again, it's to keep her customers coming back. And Kant says that purpose is clearly a conditional good depending on other things. After all, a business could have lots of customers, but be quite evil. I'll leave it to you to think of evil companies that have lots of customers. I suspect it's not that hard, is it? But anyhow, Kant himself would just point out that having a lot of customers is a consequence of your actions, setting the fair prices in this case. And Kant has already said there's nothing inherently good. He's rejected teleology. There's nothing inherently morally good about outcomes. The goodness of outcomes are always conditionally valuable. Always. And so, there's nothing inherently good about keeping your customers. Sure, keeping your customers is probably prudent, but Kant says that doesn't mean it's morally good. It's only conditionally good. So that's the first problem. There's nothing inherently good about the shopkeeper's purpose, keeping customers. Now, the second, now we're going to get a little deeper now. The second deeper problem here we're seeing with the shopkeeper is that there very well might be a lot of other actions the shopkeeper could do to satisfy her purpose. Remember, her purpose is to keep her customers. And she's just picking this action of setting fair prices because it seems to actually do that. But there could be other things the shopkeeper could do to keep their customers coming back. One way to do that is, again, setting fair prices. Great, that's her duty. Well done. But what if the shopkeeper could keep her customers coming back by sabotaging her competitors? Yeah, they come back because they have no one else to go through. Heck, maybe she can get away with murdering them. I don't know. But again, if she could get away with murdering them and that causes her customers to come back, well, then prudence says do that, if you can get away with it. Or the shopkeeper might start lying about her products. And if she can get away with lying, the customers keep coming back even though she's lied to them. That's all possible. And so maybe she can get away with all sorts of evil actions that will allow her customers to keep coming back. And if all she cares about is keeping her customers coming back to make that money, then she can do all that bad stuff, again, as long as she gets away with it. And so this reveals the second problem is that the shopkeeper is doing the right thing, setting fair prices, but for the wrong reasons, because her reason here, bringing back the customers, is just prudential. It's an incentive of prudence. And that incentive of prudence, keeping your customers coming, making money, those could justify very different actions that are very questionable and more, lying, cheating, stealing, perhaps. So immoral maxims are maxims that can change depending on how the incentives are working, the purpose. Yes, actions conform to duty because the incentives at this moment say, do your duty, but you're not doing it because it's your duty. You're doing it because of the incentive, because of prudence. And Kant is just saying stuff like that is weak, contingent, because if those incentives change, prudence doesn't care about the duty anymore. Prudence will say, if you can get away with doing all this bad stuff, do it, because that's going to get you the stuff you really want. Because you're not doing it because it's the right thing. You're doing it because right now it happens to work. And so again, this goes back to that fundamental disconnect between the action and the reason for doing the action. If you're only doing the action because it's prudent right now, well, then you'll gladly violate that action or violate the duty of, whatever it is. if you have the opportunity to get away with it. If you have the opportunity to get away with it. Anyway, a lot there, I know. It's rough. But the kind of, well, the good news is we can distill everything that's said down there to this just idea that it's not enough to just simply conform to the duty. In order to have a goodwill, you have to do more than just do the right thing. Again, something more is needed there. And of course, we can ask ourselves, what more is needed? It's going to be something about the reasons, as we can tell. The reason you're doing it seems to matter. It's not that you just did the right thing. It's for the right reasons. And then we've seen how that's why Kant is suspicious of the reason being, say, like prudence or a desire or an inclination. All that's conditional on the good, but that's not enough for the goodwill itself. But before we go into that, I think definitely time for another break. Maybe relax your eyes a bit more. Oy, oy, oy. And then we can come back and we'll see if we'll ever figure out what it is that makes the goodwill actually good. We've seen a lot of what it is not. Well, are we going to get? We'll get there soon. I'll see you back here in a moment.